Guided meditations can be a useful practice, both for your own spiritual journey and development, but also for practicing our oneness with others. And in this video, I'll tell you why that is. Hey everyone, welcome to Holiness Connection. Welcome to Oneness Practices if you're watching this from my Substack newsletter. So today I wanted to talk about guided meditations and using them in terms of practicing particularly our oneness. Like I said in the intro, you can use them, of course, in other ways in your spiritual practice too. But today I want to focus on oneness because in my Oneness Practices Substack, and to some extent here as well, I do offer that as one way, just one way, but one important way that we can practice oneness. So it may seem counterintuitive, like shouldn't we only be practicing right in person with someone else when we're practicing oneness? And again, this is just one way to practice, so absolutely that's true. I think it is very useful to take it out into the world and actually be practicing our oneness. And I have other ways that I talk about that, in my other content. But I do have guided meditations as a piece of it for some very specific reasons. So I wanted to share those with you today. And these sort of like merge into each other as I say them. I'm sort of pulling them out as separate points, but they, as you'll see, they kind of flow together as well. So the first thing I wanted to point out about guided meditations is that they are a body practice in a way. So usually when we talk about body practices, we're talking about moving our bodies. And often in a guided meditation, you can sometimes do walking guided meditations, but often we are being more still. But why is because it's using our brains. So it is an embodied practice, I believe, because of the use of our brains. So the second point I wanted to make about why guided meditations are useful as a oneness practice flows right from that brain activity point that I just made. So when we do the guided meditation, our subconscious is actually practicing it. It is doing it as if it's happening right then. And I don't know how much you already know or don't know about doing practices mentally like that, mentally and deeply like that, as if they're really happening. But it has been shown to be very effective. So let me just give you one example so you can sort of see what I mean by that. I'm going to read it so I get the specifics right here. So in a study on everyday people, Guang Yue, an exercise psychologist from the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in Ohio, compared results of those who did physical exercises to the results of those who carried out virtual workouts in their heads. In the physical exercise group, finger abduction strength increased by 53%, so as you'd expect, they were physically exercising and it increased the strength. In the group that did mental contractions, who were just, experiencing it as if they were exercising physically, their finger abduction strength increased by 35%. So it was still more in the group that was actually doing the physical exercises, but the ones who were visualizing and imagining it fully, still 35% increase. However, the greatest gain was not achieved until 4 weeks after the training ended, which is also interesting because it sort of points to a time effect there where maybe you might not notice it right away, but it might in the future show up. And so, in this article, they just said this demonstrates the mind's incredible power over the body and its muscles. So that's talking, of course, about a very specific thing, but I think it's sort of mind-boggling. Like, how is that happening? But I think that can help us to realize how important something can be where you're really imagining it happening. Your brain and your subconscious believe it's happening. So if you're practicing oneness and doing those practices, that is for yourself, for your brain, for your consciousness working as practice as if there could be another person right there, for example. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about with regard to why guided meditations can be so useful as oneness practices relates to why our brain and subconscious can so affect things for us. And, that could be because of brainwave states. So those alpha and theta brainwave states during meditation actually put us into a more receptive state. If you think of something like hypnosis, alpha states can sometimes get people there, theta states even much more so. And that means that we are receptive to perhaps new ways of thinking about the world, new ways of interacting with other people. So putting ourselves in those brainwave states by being in a guided meditation very fully is actually a way that we can work with ourselves and our own, ability to have a way of working with others and interacting with them that, isn't necessarily our typical way, right? Because so much of what we are actually doing and interacting is automatic, it's conditioned by society. But with these brainwave states and guided meditation, we can be receptive to new possibilities for our oneness with others. And the fourth and final aspect I wanted to mention about guided meditations and how they can be so helpful as oneness practices, even though we aren't right in that moment physically with another person, is just that. It's actually helpful to practice not around other people sometimes, because often we do have those automatic reactions, projections, a lot of things that we have to work through when we are around someone else. And so practicing, it can be still useful to practice with others, certainly, like sometimes maybe in a way where it's more contentless and therefore we are not, going to have the reactions come up. And ideally, as we practice more and more, we can hold both and we can interact and, do whatever we need to do with someone else in terms of how we interact, having boundaries, what we need to say, and also be practicing the oneness at the same time. But like any skill, it can be really helpful to be doing it and strengthening it at other times as well. So those guided meditation times are a great time to really strengthen the skill without those other aspects that make it more challenging as part of the mix. So hopefully that was helpful. There's a lot of wisdom and spiritual traditions and religious traditions that do have meditation or prayer in various ways involved. And I do think that's related. I think it's related that there's that wisdom around doing something like a prayer or a meditation that can strengthen not only ourselves on our spiritual life and our spiritual journeys, but in relation to others as well. And if you're interested in this kind of content, you may want to get on that Substack newsletter. I have the information about it in the description box below. And I'd appreciate if you resonated with this content, a like and a subscribe so we can get this information out to as many people as possible.